like to welcome everyone joining us tonight. And if you love music and care about the future of music and musicians, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we're going to discuss what the future might look like for music and musicians in light of the pandemic today, as well as months and years from now. But first, I'd like to introduce my friend and coworker who will be monitoring tonight's chat and generally keeping me in line, Darnice Jasper.
We're trying to.
It's a tall order. As always, Darnice, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Darnice and I also host a virtual movie discussion group, so I'm going to put a small plug in that. If you would like more information about that, you can email me at awolverton, that's AWOLVERTON, and I know you've already got it, at aacpl.net. Our movie program is open to anybody in the world. You don't have to live in Arundel County, Maryland. Just like the people that are viewing this right now, you don't have to live in Maryland. So we're glad that you joined us tonight. So you came tonight to hear from the panelists and not from me, but I wanted to tell you my reasons for presenting this program. Some of you may know that for 13 years, I taught music in public schools, specifically middle and high school band. And my wife, Cindy, recently retired from the United States Navy Band after serving for 20 years. Music has always been and will continue to be a part of our lives. And like everybody here tonight, we're deeply concerned about the future of music and the people who make it, which is why I've invited these wonderful people, these professional musicians, to join us tonight. We're going to explore a lot of topics about how the pandemic has changed and continues to change the musical landscape. We'll also take questions from the audience via chat. You can ask your questions in the chat at any time, and some of you have already started that, which is fine. But Darnice is going to present those questions to our panelists during the second half of the program. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in with some introductions. I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves. So, Thom, let's start with you.
Oh, I hate this. Hi, I'm Thom Rotella. How's
Okay. Just tell us what you do for a living.
I'm a guitar player and composer, and I'm in the LA. I live in Los Angeles, and I do a mixture of things. I do studio work, and I do my own CDs in the smooth jazz genre and straight ahead jazz, and I perform mainly around LA, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and your CDs are wonderful. I own some of them, so
oh, good.
It's wonderful stuff. Thank you for joining us, Thom.
My pleasure.
And let's move on to Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Jones. I am living proof that Mr. Wolverton was a band director at a middle school in Texas because I was in his band. I am a flutist. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I teach a wide variety of students, but my main job right now is as the Assistant Dean of Community Engagement and Career Services at Juilliard.
Wonderful. Alice, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. And let's move on to Brad Tatum.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Brad Tatum. I'm a busy musician in the DC area. I'm band and orchestra director at Elizabeth Seton High School in Bladensburg, Maryland. I also have a large horn studio that I teach outside of school, and then I perform on historical and modern horns, specifically with the Washington Bach Consort, Washington Concert Opera, and a wide variety of other groups throughout the DC area.
Great. And Brad, thank you. Thank you so much. And we have another panelist who is having some technical difficulties. We're going to get him on in just a couple of minutes, Brian Stevens. I'll just tell you a little bit about Brian. Brian is a professional drummer. He's a studio musician. He also is a producer and many, many other things that he will tell you about in just a few moments, hopefully very soon once we get him back on. So again, I would like to thank all of our panelists for joining us tonight. I know Thom the least, but I met him a couple of years ago at the Conference on World Affairs in Boulder, Colorado, where he was on a panel discussing how musicians can survive in a different atmosphere in the era of digital and streaming music. And Brad is one of my local friends, so I'm delighted to have him. As Alice just told you, Alice and Brian are both former students of mine, but their success is all their own. I was just delighted to be a very small part of it. So once again, thank you all for being here. So what I'd like to do tonight is to divide the discussion into 3 segments. And these are very fluid segments, and it's totally okay if we take these topics into different directions. We're going to look at how the pandemic has influenced and will continue to influence music in these 3 areas. First, live music and concert attendance. Second, music education. And third, finding new audiences. So under the live music and concert attendance category, before we take a close look at how the pandemic has impacted live music, let's take a step back and let's look at what music was like before all this. What did live music and concert attendance look like for you guys, the panelists, where you are before the pandemic? And what's it like now? And Thom, you do a lot of gigs, so why don't we start with you? What did it look like before, and what's going on now?
Well, I guess, in a way with this pandemic, fortunately for me, live playing was not my main source of income, but it was, I played regularly in clubs here around the LA area. And, it was great. I mean, I was playing at least, we were performing 3 or 4 times a month, and there were regular, places that I would work different times. And, it was just kind of normal before it. Now basically everything's closed up here in LA. I don't know how it is everywhere else. I'm assuming it's probably the same. So, it was kind of a vibrant scene here, I really miss playing with other musicians. I play with my computer, as almost everybody is now, but yeah, it's changed quite a bit, and I don't know how that's going to come back. I mean, I'm not sure if there's going to be like a point where everybody says, okay, now we can breathe again and it's going to get back to normal, or there's always going to be this trepidation. I mean, I think that's kind of the hardest thing about this, is not knowing how it's going to resolve itself. And I don't think anybody quite is sure what it's going to look like when this is done. Right now, I can't hear anybody.
We have Brian. Yeah, we have Brian back. Brian, can you say a few words? Are you good?
Hey, is everybody hearing me okay?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We
That's
need a
fantastic.
drummer, Brian. You're just in time.
That's right. We can't keep any tempo going. Brian,
3 different audio companies, and this happened.
Well, Brian, tell us. We're so glad we got you back on connected.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I do a lot of different things. I started my music career path as a drummer, and that's led into being an audio engineer and being a producer. Also, now being a podcaster. I've always been an educator throughout all of that. And I even own a company now that makes products, audio products for musicians. So technology is always the bane of my existence, because even when it works, it just kind of works.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you reconnected with us. And Brian, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit, because you've just been touring, right?
Yeah. We just started a brand new tour with this Elton John tribute act that I'm working with, kind of a Vegas style tribute group called Elton Live, the Ultimate Tribute. We use the word tribute a whole lot for copyright reasons and trademark reasons, I guess. But the idea is that we're trying to present the closest visual and sonic experience that you can get to a real Elton John show without the real Elton.
Yeah. So what's the attendance been like? What's the what kind of measures have been put in place for these concerts?
Well, thankfully, we sold out just about every single show we played. There's a caveat to that, though. We played in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago in a room that holds 1,400 people, but they only let us sell 300 tickets. So it was all seated. It was all 4 seats to a table. You had to buy an entire table, which meant that you were probably coming with people that you either lived with or were really, really close to. and all those tables were spread out at least 6 feet apart. So the great thing is we can say that we sell out every place that we play. The real truth is that we can only capitalize on a part of the capacity. And it's been a challenge for us as far as the payroll, because it's a pretty big payroll with all the people in the band, people on the crew, all of our techs, all that stuff. So it's been a little bit of a challenge.
Did you guys do or think about doing extra shows to make up for some of that, like additional shows?
Yeah. There are a lot of places that will go in that will have to do a 7 o'clock show and a 10 o'clock show. And instead of a 2-hour show, maybe we're doing 90 minutes. And that way we can easily sandwich, two of these shows in together on a particular night. Or in other cases, like this week, Friday and Saturday, we're in Destin, we're in the same location. So I'm not exactly sure what the capacity of that place is, but it's pretty close. But we're there for 2 nights so that we can make sure everybody gets paid.
Okay. So you're really kind of working twice as hard to get the same number of people going in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a great time for us, though, because we're revamping the entire production between new band members, new stage production, new crew people. We basically decided the next 6 to 8 months is these iterative phases where every week, every month, we're trying to improve something about the show so that by the time COVID's done, the show really is finally fully baked. So if you come and see us this week, if you see us 3 months from now, there's probably a lot of production elements and a lot of things about the show itself that's going to be dramatically different because we're just making incremental improvements.
Okay. Let me move on to Alice and Brad. You guys are in a little different situation because you do more of a classical music, some chamber music, things like that. What were the audiences like before COVID, and what do you think it's going to be like when you're able to do more things live?
I was just thinking about this the other day because my last pre-lockdown concert was March 8th, 2020. So I've not made music with another person in the same space in over a year. But one of the things that I think marks how I think about pre-lockdown concerts in New York City was kind of the rigidity of it, that if you wanted to go to a concert and you lived outside of Manhattan, which most New Yorkers do, you had to plan your commute to get to a show. There was oftentimes a really long lead time if you wanted to book space, if you wanted to be performing. And actually online has been kind of like the Wild West in a great way, that if somebody's suddenly like, oh yeah, let's do this thing, let's do a live stream on Sunday, suddenly you can just do it because there's not that same sense of barrier in terms of getting everybody to be in the same space at the same time and clear it with the venue and sell your tickets and everything like that. But it also means like I haven't been paid for a gig in over a year.
Oh, no.
Not a performing gig, right? Other kinds of gigs. And I guess the other thing, just thinking about what works really well online, the thing that I've found has been not that hard to transition is moments of like, I love weird new classical music and improvisational classical music, and being able to do that online has been just as satisfying as it might be in person. And honestly, you might get more people in the audience. If you know, hey, we're doing this weird improv set, you might get 5 people, but online, maybe your target audience isn't just the people who are geographically near you. It might be people who are far more wide flung and are far flung and widespread. And so the potential actually to find your people is better online in a way.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're able to take some chances that you could certainly do in a live performance, but and I don't want to say it's safer virtually, but again, the exposure is potentially much greater. And you might catch those 1 or 2 people that really gravitate toward that experiment. And
yeah, or collaborate with people who are elsewhere in the world who have perhaps, again, the same kind of aesthetic or are trying to target the same people that you are. Yeah. But because you live in completely different geographical places, you wouldn't typically get to do a show together. I know I've been parts of live streams where that's been the case, and that's been really exciting.
Yeah. And I want to talk more with all of us about the potential of doing more of that, even as we move into safer times. Brad, you've done a lot of virtual stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
So when the pandemic started, I had a ton of concerts that were coming up, and of course they all got canceled, as all of us experienced. But I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to make sure I stayed in shape so that when all this started back up, I'd be ready to go. Because as a horn player, a brass player, but all instruments, when you take time off, things go south fast. So I had a YouTube channel that I've barely touched, just a couple random performances I'd put things on. And I was seeing people do stuff, and I wanted to figure out how to do it so that I could do it with my band students. And so I just started doing duets. I started just really blindly doing a duet and sang a metronome and drone, and then playing the second part and then layering them and hoping it worked. And that started to work well. And then I just learned a lot from researching and seeing everything else people were doing. And I learned how to use audio editing software, and I learned how to splice it together, balance. I've learned about mastering gradually. So this has been a learning process for me this year. And I've been able to put out a bunch of pieces with my students to send to the parents. I've avoided making it public because of copyright issues mainly.
Right.
I've been able to put up videos that were unlisted and send them to the parents, and the parents can send it to, of course, family members. And that's been a really big hit. It's given the girls, all girls school. It's a Catholic girls school. And it's given the girls a great motivation and reason to practice. And they've learned how to use editing software. I actually taught them how to use the editing software, figuring that would be a chance for them to learn new skills and be able to learn to refine. Because if you can hear the issues in your playing, you can change it.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is Washington Bach Consort, my main performing group in the area that I do historical horns with, they've actually they did an online concert series where they recorded complete Bach cantatas, all virtually. And so we did the entire Christmas oratorio that they recorded, as well as 2 or 3 other cantatas before that. So they actually had paid gigs for us, and that was really nice to have some paid performances that were virtual.
That is really nice. And I bet a lot of musicians learn really fast how to do a lot of things technologically that they may not have been experienced with before. Well, let me ask you guys, and you can just jump in any order you want to. What does this mean for venues from here on? Independent venues, larger venues, smaller venues. Where do you see this going?
It seems to me like, I've been hearing that some places are closing. I think it's going to be a thing that some places aren't going to make it if it keeps going. That's just, I don't know how. Actually, I'm surprised more places haven't closed at this point. So Alice, you're in New York. I heard there's some clubs closing there and stuff. Do you know about that, or?
It's bleak. Yeah.
You say it so cheerily. It's good.
I think also, I'm sorry, my brain just went to a word that I'm not going to use on a broadcast. Sorry, but people really knew that it hit the fan in the spring here in New York when it was clear that the Met was closed. That was an eye opener for people that, oh no, the Met is definitely closed through the fall. That's when sort of the being able to pull the wool over your eyes and not pay attention to the reality was kind of hitting people. But the thing that I keep thinking about, because I teach at Juilliard and we have a bunch of students who are thinking about what's going to happen for them when they leave the baby nest and go out into the world. It's not like if the pandemic were over tomorrow that there would be audiences at all of your shows, because people are hurting, right? People have lost their jobs. People do not have the same kind of financial security or expectation of that's how you spend your leisure time that we might have had a year ago. And so I think that even if the venues are ready and they've updated their HVAC systems and they've got the tape on the floor or whatever it might be, that there's going to be, I think, quite a big hit to the number of people who feel like that's something that they can work back into their lives, right? Because the time to build that habit of expectation of going to live music and to have the disposable income to be able to do so will take a long time to catch back up.
Somebody pointed out an interesting thing to me, that after the pandemic of 1918, they had the Roaring 20s after that. So maybe we're going to have the Roaring 20s in this century. I don't know. But
you're right. But when I think about those kinds of historical examples, it's who was actually part of those parties. It wasn't everybody.
No,
Right.
well,
And
it,
so,
it
like,
never is, right?
Right.
and so our historical
Exactly.
artifacts of that paint this picture that everybody was having this fantastic time, and clearly that was not the case. It's just who's actually getting recorded by the process of, well, of history, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Down here in
So,
I was gonna say, down here in
yeah.
Atlanta, we've had maybe half of the clubs close here, and usually the ones that are open are the ones that are a little bit bigger, the ones that have a little bit more financial runway that they can kind of keep things open, and even if they're at limited capacity. The thing that I've seen in the shows that we've done in and around the metro Atlanta area is that because it doesn't cost quite as much to live here, even though people have taken a financial hit, people that have maybe squirreled away a little extra money or aren't spending as much doing other kinds of activities are a little quicker on the take to be able to buy tickets for our shows. We've got a show that we just advanced for 5 months out that's already sold out. But again, property values here are a lot lower than living in LA or New York or some other major metropolitan area. And maybe it's because we've got a lot of, I don't want to say rural-based economy, but there are a lot more country folk around here. So maybe because we don't always have to work in urban centers, people are still able to make some money however they can. And so as far as selling tickets hasn't been a problem for us as much as it is selling enough tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that from a lot of people in a lot of artistic, endeavors as well. So what do you guys think about when things start to get a little bit safer? Are some people going to be so used to virtual and they just think this is the safest thing for me to do right now? But then on the other hand, we're going to have people that are just hungering and thirsting for live performances. And are you guys going to have to now double up your efforts and do both of those with equal vigor?
I don't think I'm not sure that the virtual performances, they're still going to be around. But I think for the most part, they're going to fade to the side because nothing replaces live music, like the movement of the sound. I mean, digitized sound and honestly, like virtual orchestras, they can be fun to watch, but they never give you that excitement and energy like you have when you're in the room with them. So especially in the DC area, I feel like things will jump back fairly quickly once people are confident. The question will be is how quickly will the groups be able to rebook venues and jump right back into things?
Yeah, good point.
We've been playing, I've had friends over and we've played in the front yard. And the neighbors, come by and people drive by and people are so excited to hear live music. I mean, I think people are hungry to get out and do, first, everybody's got cabin fever, so people are dying to get out to do anything.
Yeah.
But it was really kind of heartwarming to see people actually they do really like to hear live music, even if you're playing in your front yard or somewhere. But people, I think they miss it.
Yeah. I missed it. I know.
One of the things I've noticed with venues across the Southeast that I've been playing the last 6 or 8 months is that almost every venue that I've played has either put some kind of live streaming setup in place that wasn't there before,
right,
or they've doubled down and they've gone from like the security camera view with whatever microphone was around to doing 4 cameras with a separate board mix and a person in a room. I think live venues are starting to double down on this idea that maybe there's the possibility of being able to work in tandem, so that you have these live events and there's a bit of an area in and around the venue where you can get people to come. But if someone's more than, say, 45 minutes to an hour away, especially if they're across the country, maybe there's an opportunity to market those events to those people. And even if it's only a $10 sale or a $20 sale, if you can get enough of those and market them the right way through Facebook and through some of these other online means, then maybe there is some way to make money that eventually becomes an entirely new income stream for the venue and ultimately for the artist.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
No, that's a great point, Brian, because one of the clubs here, the Baked Potato, did that. It was like a jazz club. And we did a live stream in the early part of the pandemic, around in June. And, I think not a lot of clubs are doing it here. And I'm actually surprised. The Baked Potato did it for about a month or two, and then they stopped because they opened up for a minute and then they got closed down, and I don't know what happened. But I would hope that most clubs and venues would do this, because what a great thing for the artist. If I'm playing in LA and I don't want to leave LA, I can reach people in Japan or Europe or wherever, and it opens up our whole audience and a base for our music to get out to people that would never hear us or never see us live. So, I hope, like you said, when this comes back, that more clubs are going to, that's going to be incorporated into it now, because it seems like an obvious great thing for everybody, including the club, to build up, a worldwide presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing that's been a financial windfall for most musicians in this area have been churches, because there's a lot of contemporary church worship music, and they need bands. And a lot of churches, at least the ones that I'm in contact with, the ones that I do a lot of work for, have doubled down and hiring a tier higher musician, because there's so many top tier touring musicians and a fair amount of studio musicians in this town that aren't working as much. They're all taking Sunday gigs, so they'll make a few $100s on a Sunday by taping their services. And so that churches are starting to see too, well, maybe we can leverage the online thing, not just to grow our audience in the drive-by traffic, people that go by our sign every day, but there are people all over the world that we could push our message to, and the content that we're creating. Clubs, churches, the modalities are the same, even though the end goal is different, maybe.
One of the things that, in what Thom and Brian are saying, that I think of as the flip side of this is, right, so there is the potential for you as an artist to reach more people. But I think the potential flip side of this is that the people who are doing all the reaching end up becoming more concentrated in the hands of a few people, right? People who are really well known or who have kind of name recognition. The example that I give my students at Juilliard is, down the road, if a booking company can have Yo-Yo Ma in Berlin in the afternoon and Tokyo later in the evening, they will do it, right? Because that's a person that people are going to be drawn to. And so one of the things that I fear, and maybe I'm being a nervous Nelly about this, but I fear that there's going to be more of a stratification between the artists who can equip their home to be as optimal of an acoustic sound space as possible, and those who cannot afford the equipment or the better Wi-Fi or the space to be able to broadcast from their homes. And that's going to further, particularly within the classical world, further exacerbate the distinctions between the people who are coming into that field, who have the financial resources to be able to have access to all that technology, and the people who are not, and maybe just are really, really great at their instruments, but can't command that same kind of broadcast space.
Yeah.
But we're mainly more talking about public performance spaces and teaming the, adding the streaming in with the performances there. I agree with you on the home thing. Yeah, there's some guys. I had a guy over here working on my studio, and he just been at Lionel Richie's, and it's like I have one little garage, and he goes, "Oh, he has 6 studios in his house." I'm like,
the organization that was actually doing a great job with this before the pandemic, it was the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. Their digital concert hall is a subscription service where you can see live concerts or archived concerts. Hundreds of concerts are available to you on there, and they're all amazing, and they're perfect. They're incredibly well audio edited as well as video edited, so they're always really engaging performances. And it was popular before the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, they actually made it free for a month to anyone who wanted to sign up. And then since things have been gradually reopening, they've been doing concerts still, and they've been really successful with their subscription service.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to see. It's just tremendous. We started doing the Metropolitan Opera, and I never thought I would have seen the entire Ring cycle, but now I have, thanks to the pandemic, and it was wonderul. Sorry,
what
Alice.
What were you wearing, Andy?
What was I wearing? I'm not going to tell you.
No, I would just say, Brad, in your example, the Berlin Phil's online stuff is really fantastic, and it reminds me of like sort of the extra value that you can have in a visual or a fixed medium, right? That like you can get up closer to the instruments, you can see them from different angles, the things you could not do if you were seeing it in person. And I think it's probably those moments where you're taking advantage of the medium as something that is not just a poor substitute for in person, but is something else in an entirely, that those are the things that hopefully will persist as well, because they do, promote more opportunities for access and intimacy with the music making.
Yeah. Those are great. Those are great. I want to move back to this, but I want to quickly take us in a slightly different direction. And again, we can revisit any of these topics, but we were talking about venues that won't make it. Let's talk a little bit about groups or performing groups that may not make it and how that affects students. So Alice, you deal with students. Brad, you deal with students. All of you guys probably deal with students. But what I'm concerned about the people that want to make a career out of music, whether it's going to conservatory or just to major in music, or they want to teach music. So what can we do with these ladies and gentlemen that want to make a career of this?
Speaking from the classical music world, typically the conservatory training model is really narrow. It's really, really great at getting somebody deeply immersed in a particular set of skills, but not necessarily in what it means to be a musician of the world. And I don't necessarily mean of particular kinds of music. I just mean in the ways that music is experienced and loved and absorbed in everyday people's lives. And for better or for worse, that model really puts students on a path towards a particular kind of career, which for all intents and purposes, like almost no one gets. I'm talking about like orchestral careers or operatic careers, singing on stage, and the the sort of mental hoops that you have to jump through to convince yourself that it's worth it to spend those hours in the practice room, and can end up creating this feeling that, of course, my art has value. I spent all this time on it, which isn't necessarily how the audience is going to feel about it. And so for me, the thing about being flexible and being broad and being responsive and reimagining what it is that a musician can be and the value that your art can have, and being understanding of how it can connect with many more people in other ways beyond just what the model of training that we have so far leads to.
Yeah. Brad, you had something.
I think it'll be interesting to see, what openings come up over the next year. I think a lot of musicians will not be returning to the concert halls, be it because they were nearing retirement and then the pandemic hit, or other musicians may decide to pursue different fields. So I think a lot of the small orchestras will probably be fine because they're basically freelance. But I think the personnel will change dramatically. So they'll, during the pandemic, they didn't have to spend much money because they didn't have salaried musicians. But will their musicians still be around for them to hire once things reopen, or will they have to find and pull from a whole new roster? So it'll be interesting to see how things make up. I know I've had at least 2 colleagues tell me that they don't plan on performing again because they're nearing retirement, and then they don't want to test and see if the vaccine works out or not. So they didn't want to be guinea pigs for that new process. So interesting to see who returns to perform and how it's a new group of performers.
Yeah. I'm concerned too that, and let's face it, most of the classical audiences that I'm a part of are people that are up in their years. And if those people aren't coming to the concerts, and we know that before the pandemic, orchestras were folding right and left. That's a big concern for me for the audiences, and also for the young people, again, who want to be a part of these orchestras, or maybe even some of the armed forces military bands, although those audiences are a little bit different depending on how often they tour and that type of thing. So I mean, what would you say to a young person that comes to you, Brad, maybe a student in your high school band, or or Alice, somebody that asks you, you know, I really want to make a career out of music. I mean, how do you encourage them in this atmosphere?
I mean, I just encourage them that if you're willing to put effort in and be flexible and try different things, there's lots of opportunities. I've been able to provide for my family and enjoy a fun career so far, doing all the teaching and gigging I do. So it's a lot of fun, and you can provide for your family and be successful, but you can't get stuck. This is what I'm going to do. And then decide that's the only way you're going to do it. You have to be open to the things that come, or the doors that open to you, and be willing to try new things.
Yeah. Flexibility.
That raised an interesting point. When I came through music school, there was a completely different paradigm that was taught to me, which was mainly geared towards being a live performing or touring musician. And if you wanted to do anything else, you sort of had to be one thing. Like if you wanted to be a studio musician, well, you had to go to LA, or you had to go to Nashville, or you had to go to New York, and you had to stay in those places. You couldn't go tour. You couldn't go play shows. You couldn't do these things because then people wouldn't call you for the studio stuff. And then you couldn't be a studio musician if you were touring, because touring had its own. Now we live in a world where you can be all things at the same time. I can do a session for somebody in Belgium on Monday, and I can be doing some kind of church recording for a video on Tuesday, and then by Thursday I may be doing a commercial for donuts or something, without plugging anybody's particular donuts. But and next week I might have 2 or 3 singles for people that live all over the world that come out through all the digital platforms. And with the Elton thing, then I'll go, like I'm going this week, Friday and Saturday, to play in Destin. And if you have the capacity to be able to juggle a lot of balls at the same time, and you can keep most of them in the air most of the time, really anything's on the table. And for me, the art of what I do has become more artisan. So it's because I think of what I do as a service business, the way that I do it is the art. It may not be the actual piece of music. It may not be the end product, but it's my component of the grander thing, the bigger package. That's my art, my artisan nature for how I do the thing that I do in that particular case. And that's opened the floodgates for opportunity for me, because then I can just start to look around and thinking with a service business mind, how do I solve this person's problem in a way that uses the talents that I've got and the resources that I've got and the facility that I've got? And then how does this other person with a completely different problem, how do I help them solve that, but using the same tools, the same resources, the same toolkit, the same knowledge base? Yeah,
so we're really looking at opportunities to expand what we're already doing, or make larger your toolkit, so to speak. So yeah, lots of different opportunities. Yeah.
The music history teacher in me would just like to point out that what we're talking about of having a portfolio of things that make your career is like historically performance practice accurate, right? If you think about the career of Duke Ellington, you think about the career of Frank Johnson, you think about the career of Hector Berlioz, Johann Sebastian Bach, right? They are all people who were composing and conducting and doing music criticism and leading bands. Like everything was just an expression of their musicianship. And there's some weird thing that happened in the 20th century where somehow this idea that we had to narrow down and do just one thing worked for a generation or two, and somehow we've just clung to it as if it is the best paradigm.
Yeah, and what you guys are talking about, I mean, that I'm getting excited just thinking about the different possibilities, different directions things can go in. So that's very exciting. Well, I hate to derail the discussion again, but I know we've got a lot of people in the chat that have been waiting to ask you guys some questions and waiting for me to shut up. So I'm going to go to Darnice and see what questions we have, Darnice, from the chat.
Let me unmute. Okay. So we've got a few things that were happening. One was actually Mark started it off when Brad and Brian were talking about live streaming and things. What are your favorite live streaming software and hardware? So what do you use to do your live streaming?
And you guys just jump in.
I'll jump.
Sure.
So I've got two different streaming setups here. The one that's here upstairs uses some Blackmagic hardware that's basically all direct inputs into a very large Mac Pro. And then we use OBS to do all the camera switching and titling and all that kind of stuff. Downstairs, we're using one of the newer ATEM, Blackmagic ATEM minis, where you basically can plug 4 cameras in, and it acts as a switcher. Again, going into OBS is the software we're using primarily, but because I've got clients who use the downstairs studio for that kind of thing, it really depends on what they're comfortable with. If they're on StreamYard, if they're using something like Switcher Studio, or there's a whole litany of other things that you can use. We basically keep copies of everything, licenses for everything. So if a client comes in and they want to do something here at the studio that's live, we can basically take all of our hardware, all our different cameras and switchers and things, and just select their particular software that they're most comfortable with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then Brad had mentioned that he uses Reaper for audio editing. What other types of software do you use?
I mean, that's been the bulk of what I've been doing has been Reaper, and then honestly, I've kept it simple and just used iMovie for what I've been doing. I haven't tried to branch out to do further video editing. That's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
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 Because part of what I do here with my studio is working for commercial clients and working for hire on that stuff. You know, we're using Final Cut Pro, and we're using the whole suite of Adobe products, not just Premiere, but After Effects and things like that as well. And for recording, primarily we're in Pro Tools HD, or they call it Pro Tools Ultimate now. But again, we keep licenses for every platform: Logic, Studio One, Digital Performer, pretty much every platform we've got licenses for on all the different machines, because people send stuff or come in with stuff in every possible format you can think of.
Mm-hmm. Alice, I think you had a comment.
I was just going to add a recommendation for two bits of software for doing low latency synchronous playing with somebody else who's not in the same place as you. One is Jacktrip, and the other is called Sonobus, Sonobus, and Sonobus is free.
How is that working, Alice? Because I have friends that have been trying to get some of those things working, and nobody's had any real luck to make it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I found is just like you would adjust your repertoire for a particular venue because it's particularly echoey or small or whatever it is, that certain repertoire works way better for even a low latency synchronous platform like that. And so I found things that are not super fast, not super rhythmic, but that are perhaps more meditative or blendy or but like, okay, that is totally a way to make music. And so, you know,
Sure.
taking our expertise as musicians and tailoring it to the medium that we're in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
That's a good point, and one that Michelle asked, because she's focusing on the kids. Do you have any tips for kids who are getting started recording their performances? What, you know, you mentioned that Sonobus was free. Are there other software, hardware recommendations for people just starting out, or things that they can, you know, access easily from home?
You know, interesting thing that was new.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. But the interesting thing I found new was I was talking to one of the college professors in the region, and apparently colleges love to look at YouTube channels for kids. So if you want to put, so he recommended having lots of short clips of them playing, and of their best stuff that they put on their YouTube channel. Just short stuff, because you know how that's how YouTube works. You don't want anything long because people turn it off after a few minutes, and putting the best stuff first. And he said it's amazing, particularly the schools that aren't huge music schools, but looking for that extra trombonist or tuba player or hornist to fill out their instrumentation. I'll take a look at those in admissions, and then throw some money those kids' ways to encourage them to keep playing and help out their ensembles in school. So I don't know if I'm saying software that to use there, but just being willing to record yourself. There's so many easy ways to videotape yourself these days, and you can use your cell phone microphone, which is surprisingly good, or you can buy even a microphone that you attach to your cell phone to upgrade it, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, thank you.
I teach in the preparatory division at Juilliard, and within that program are the like entry-level digital audio workstation that we've introduced our students to is something is called Sound Trip. and it's nice because it is super visual. So if you're a student who's interested in just the ability to do multiple tracks, add in drum beats, mess with audio in all kinds of different ways, that is a nice one to use.
There's another one that
great.
sometimes comes bundled with different products from Behringer and Mackie and some of these other companies, but you can also get it just directly from their website. It's a DAW called Traction, and if you just Google DAW Traction, you'll find it. They've got a free version that's fairly unlimited, and then you can spend as much as $100 to get extra plugins and virtual instruments and extra capabilities. But just the free version, I just finished doing an instructional video for an online school I do some stuff for, specifically about recording yourself with one microphone and that software.
Okay.
Just a quick comment from Kenneth that all of his recent hires and college auditions have been virtual, and YouTube is a great resource for that. That's been really helpful. So thank you for that tip. Got a couple of things about maybe logistics of working in concert. So what about the management PR perspective, especially in the large classical concert hall world? How is that working in this pandemic?
I think it's been kind of interesting to see, most of the orchestras and large groups have been putting out free content throughout this whole pandemic, just trying to remind people that they exist and that they're out there and they're going to still be back. It'll be interesting to see whether that by the time we do return to things, whether they feel like that was paid off and that worked. Should they have done more content, or that actually paid money, or will people choose, oh, you're not making that anymore, so I'm gonna come to the concert? So it'll just be interesting to see how that pays out.
I know that it was scary in New York when Cami, Columbia artist, closed earlier. I guess it was last year. Sorry, I don't know how time works anymore. But that was, I think, a scary moment in the classical music world. I think similar to what Brad has already mentioned about the importance of digital footprint for existing artists in terms of the content that they have available online. I think that that's going to be part of how even in the classical music, even in the stodgy classical music world, how people are going to be assessing who they book going forward, and the ability of an artist to leverage their online platform and in terms of what they do in terms of audience engagement and legwork and in terms of marketing.
The one thing I think everybody has probably learned through this pandemic is that being just a musician or being just an audio engineer or being just anything is not enough. You've also got to be your own marketing department. I would say when it comes to musicians, I'm not sure about large concert halls. I'm sure they run a lot like corporations in terms of how they do things and how they make decisions. But for individual musicians, even if you've never thought of yourself as a marketer before, now you've got to find a way to leverage the power of digital content to be able to tell your story, to be able to show people how you do things in a unique way and build your own kind of audience, because we don't do business cards anymore. Even pre-pandemic, I could think of maybe 2 out of 3,000 musicians I knew that actually had business cards. Everything is online, and how we find out about people. I'm going through a thing now where I've got to make a choice about some musicians in a group that I'm producing, and we're changing out some musicians, and all of my initial contact has been through YouTube, through Vimeo links, and through actually emailing and saying, hey, I think you'd be good for this based on what I've seen online. Could you make a couple of videos specifically doing this, so that we could see you do that instead of coming in for an audition?
Interesting.
One of the things that's happened here is along with, diversifying and doing different things. I do studio work, and I do the TV show Family Guy, and we have a 60-piece orchestra on that show. So when the pandemic came, the composer was kind of scrambling, and he was trying to do everything with computers and samples and stuff. But then they didn't like the way it sounded. So now we're all recording our parts at home, but they found that so many of the musicians didn't know how to record themselves or didn't have the gear. So all these guys that never touched a recording thing, they're having to learn this thing, and they're finding out how difficult it is. And he's getting all kinds, I mean, it's taken a while to kind of weed out the people that can really do it well. But now you have sax players, woodwind players, string players, everybody. And now everybody's, if you want to work right now in LA as a studio musician, you got to be able to record yourself at home because none of the studios are open yet.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's kind of, so the more you can learn about this technology and broaden that, I think just be prepared for anything.
I think we go back to that accessibility issue that Alice was mentioning, but then you also have to think about the accessibility of the audience, and are they going to be able to watch you on these different formats, or stream you, or do all that, which kind of comes back to one of the other questions that we had, and I'll start with you, Thom, because probably might apply to you. How are you and other musicians learning how to play without an audience? Because a lot of, contemporary music has that feedback from the audience when they're playing or improvising. So how different has it been for you?
Great question.
It's funny you mention that, because when we did this first live stream in June at the Baked Potato, there were 3 people there. So, when you're playing jazz, you're kind of used to glasses clinking and all that stuff. And I had to kind of talk to an empty room, basically. But it was kind of interesting because, I realized at a certain point, it was no different than making a record. Because if you're in a studio, you don't really have an audience. So I kind of had to switch to that mode for a while, musically, of okay, I'm not going to hear all this stuff. And it was actually kind of nice to be able to really hear the music without waitresses walking by and stuff and all that.
Dropping food.
And once I got used to kind of talking into like an empty void, I kind of got used to it. And it was kind of like I was talking to myself.
Nobody's dropping tickets during your solo trying to get credit cards from folks to
Yeah.
pay their bills.
Nobody to talk during the bass solos,
Yelling across the room for the bartender.
Yeah. So it was, I prefer to have an audience, but it worked. It worked. We everybody felt good and the band played great. So I think it's just 2 different things. I had to really divorce myself from it's not a club performance. This is a different kind of animal.
Yeah, I found it to be a big learning experience, because I know my early recordings, I had some friends who I would send things to before I posted anything. I'd be like, hey, how's this sound to you? Just trying to always have outside views before I make something permanent on the internet. But I found it interesting because early on I felt like I was very stiff, because the recorder's on. I was stiff, but now I've done so many recordings over the past year. I'm so much more free and relaxed when I'm playing for the microphone. I think that's been a really valuable experience educationally for me.
Okay, great, thank you. So kind of go back to music education now. This message was specifically for Alice. How is enrollment doing at Juilliard? Has it dropped at all? Are you seeing any changes in engagement with the students?
Statistically, no. I think maybe we've had less than 3% of our students take a leave of absence this year. The sort of draw, for better or for worse, of the Juilliard name is just as strong in this year as it has been in other years. We started the entire year, everyone was remote, and as New York City has opened up, we've gradually transitioned to having more things in person. But all of our administrative work happens remotely. All of our academic classes happen remotely. And the things that are happening in our building are all performance based. And that started actually with the dance division, did some of the earliest work. Tape on the floor, very specific. Sometimes the teacher would be in another room and zooming in, Zoom on a tablet, to see what, not zooming in to see what students were doing. But that's been sort of a driving thing of still creating a sense of community within the institution. But Brad, what you were just mentioning about that learning curve of discovering what it is to record yourself and to make it all happen, through the medium of Zoom has been a big, I hope, an eye-opening experience for many of our students as well. My last thing about Juilliard is I work in community engagement, and I run a bunch of fellowships where our students are doing performance and teaching in venues beyond Juilliard, whether it's hospitals or psychiatric institutes or Veterans Affairs. And we're serving some of the most vulnerable populations within New York City in terms of the pandemic. And so that's meant that everything that we do has to happen virtually. And that's stifling in a lot of ways, as our students have discovered, but also like opens up the possibility for more people to still be in contact with things that are meaningful to them.
Where I worry about college enrollment the most is going to be particularly your smaller schools that have music programs or a small band or a small orchestra, those groups. How many of those kids who would have gone to either major in music ed or a music performance or just play for fun will have dropped and stopped playing their instruments this year and then not come back? That's where I worry about. Those are the programs that are going to hurt the most.
Yeah, I agree. We've got another question in here that has to talk about the schools and how some school districts aren't letting students even play in the classrooms in the elementary and high school and middle school areas. And question about, do you think it's better to have kids playing virtually in this case, or sitting in a classroom and not being allowed to play?
I'm all about from what I've seen, I fully support the playing virtually, because I'm going hybrid actually this week at my school, and I've got just enough kids in a huge band room that we're going to be able to play in distance and use bell covers and masks, which will be a whole new experience for me. But I know several of my groups, they've been having hybrid for a while and they're not allowed to play. And so you have these kids coming into the school, and when they get to band class, they just have to sit there for the class and they can't play or anything. So at least while I've been online, I've been able to have everybody playing along. They're all muted, unfortunately. So like I'm playing my horn and they're playing along with me. And then I'll be like, okay, how'd that go? Thumbs up, thumbs down. And we're making it work. And then they've been doing recording projects. So you know what, that's at least kept them playing, kept them doing something. I've tried to come up with fun things to keep it interesting. But at least if they're not allowed to play, which makes sense. I know the local middle school to me, they're not allowed to play because frankly, the band room's just too small for the number of kids coming in there. You can't distance them.
Right.
So I think
one of the things I worry about with this is that, music was already becoming very computerized, shall we say, in a sense. And, these kids right now, during however long this thing's last, they're missing an important part of their development and their career of learning to play with other musicians. Because ultimately that's what our society's been about to this point. Maybe that's going to change, but there's certainly, I'm sure everybody here has gone through this, you learn different stuff as you're playing with different people in different situations. And I think, kids are missing that right now. And I'm depending on how long this goes on, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how those players develop and what music becomes, because I think it's going to have an effect on it.
There's a local private high school in Atlanta metro area. I live outside the perimeter, that I just finished last year refurbing their studio, and now I run an engineer in their studio. With their Ellington Jazz Band, they've done some interesting things this semester where we spent the first couple of months teaching the students either in class or virtually, depending on which mode they were in at the time, about the recording process. And so for this entire school year up to this point, what they've been able to do at most is to have half of the band at any one time in their band room. So what we've ended up doing was turning it into a situation where we've taught the kids the world of the recording studio and how do musicians do this, where they've got to not only play with a rhythm section in a recording situation, but how do musicians, horn players primarily, but some string players, how do they overdub? That was a word that they'd never even really heard before. And so instead of doing a Christmas concert this year, we did a Christmas video where by recording in these stages, being able to get stages or segments of the band in at a time, starting with the rhythm section and then stacking on players, we were able to put together content, audio and video for their Christmas release instead of doing a concert. And for the spring, instead of doing a spring concert, which they always spend months and months preparing for, now we're planning on doing an album. So all of the rehearsals have been geared towards every rehearsal is recorded. Part of the rehearsal is spent recording and playing. Part of the rehearsal is spent listening back to what you just did so that you can make quicker improvements. And they've really seen a huge amount of improvement in their in individual abilities and their ability to play cohesively as a group by being able to hear it back immediately. Before, it was just out into the ether and it was gone, but now every rehearsal is recorded and they're all expected to listen to it and they all help pick it apart. And it's been a great way to show them the value of recording in preparation for a concert.
The other thing that I keep thinking about is that, you know, playing hands on your instrument is only some of what we do as a musician, right? And things like music theory, music history, music criticism, those are all things that translate really well to an online learning environment, and they are part of what it is to be a part of the world of music. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is that, oh my gosh, the people who like 15 years ago were super into making electronic music and was like, whoa, what are y'all doing? This is not what we do in the classical music world. Suddenly they're the ones who have the most valuable skills right now. and that is still music making, right? And yeah, there's aspects of technique on your instrument that you might not be able to work in when we're stuck in this environment, but there are aspects of electronic music or other kinds of music making that are still completely viable.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so we've been talking a lot about students because and their access to teachers and networking and things. But I think that was, who was asking that? Sorry, Mark, or sorry, I forgot who said it. But how can an adult heading into a second career approach those challenges while trying to get into the industry? Do you have any suggestions for people trying to change careers to get into any music industry in that way?
Don't. No.
That was a tough one.
That's a classic
We're
one, right?
full. We're completely full. We can't take anybody else.
No, Brad just said that people are going to be retiring soon. There's no.
That's right.
Oh, this is Bardex. There you go.
The one thing I will say about this, because of the digital ability to market what you do, the one thing that I've definitely seen, and with students that I come in contact with, I've encouraged them, you got to get better, because now it's a lot easier for someone to come out of the middle of nowhere and get an opportunity that would have been yours because they're better. So you got to work twice as hard, not only twice as hard or 3 times as hard at being able to play your instrument, but you got to work 3 times as hard at all the other things. I spent 3 hours of my day today working on my website. Before, I probably would have watched a ball game. You know, there are a lot of things I do differently now because there's so many people that are coming from outside this industry getting into it for the first time, because they can market their services in ways that maybe they didn't feel comfortable doing the things we traditionally would have done before to try and get work.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Very good point.
I will offer the advice that I offer to all my students at Juilliard when I'm doing career advising and somebody comes to me and they say, I want to get into X. And I say, start doing X, right? The best way to get yourself doing that thing and to get other people to know you for doing that thing is just simply to start doing it, knowing that you will fail, that you will mess up, you will learn from that, you will get better. And again, if you want people to know you for being the person who does whatever it is, fill in the blank, then you need to be the person who is doing that thing, so that when somebody's like, oh, I needed somebody who does that thing, they're going to think about you.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Thank you. Okay, so I got a couple more questions that kind of veer in a different direction. We were talking about orchestras and the state of music and concerts. Kenneth said that the good smaller orchestras are recording members and paying, and then putting everything together for a broadcast. Some groups are broadcasting old concerts with no pay and no notification to the musicians. Could someone possibly talk about the Met situation? As Alice is a deep sigh.
On that, not the Mets, broadcasting other concerts. I got a really pleasant email yesterday from the Washington Concert Opera saying, "Hey, we are going to be streaming the opera that you were part of back in the fall of 2019. We're sending you a check for this amount." And that was just a really nice, pleasant email to get. So some groups are paying for the streaming services, things like that. But it is interesting. It's a wild west, and there's no rhyme or reason for when you're going to get a check for what you did and when some other orchestra is just going to throw that concert up there and, oh, there I am on there. So you just never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an interesting like collective cognitive dissonance about music, right? That music is fundamentally a social thing, right? There is a listener, there is somebody making music, there are people thinking, you might be traveling through time, but you are like fundamentally communing with other people. You need people in order to make music, and the tricky thing about a situation like the Met is that the people are not the ones who are at the center of it. It's somehow that the art is somehow separate from the people who are making those sounds, and that I maybe this speaks to some other broader issue about how we do or do not care for the people around us. I hope it does not, but my brain can make that connection, and I feel like we shouldn't be in a situation where that connection is possible to be made.
So no one wants to talk about the Met. It's fine.
Wait, I thought I just did.
Well, I guess you did. Yes. Around about, yes, I guess you did. So let's talk about different avenues. Debbie wants to know, have any of you ever collaborated with podcasters or indie filmmakers during this time?
I'm constantly working with podcasters, so yes.
Yeah.
And all between producing podcasts for people, but also collaborating with people and creating content and using the content for a purpose other than just what the podcast is about. So yes, that's the short answer.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna,
So we got one more question in the chat.
Yeah, and then
I'm
I
sorry,
want to
go
throw one. No, I was just, go ahead. I'll throw mine out in just a minute.
Okay. What about teaching individual lessons via Zoom, technique, resonance, dynamics? How is that going for those who are teachers?
For drummers, it's awful.
I can
The
imagine.
technology is not built for it. Unless you're going to play, like I've got an electronic kit, unless you're going to play on one of those. Even with a great studio setup, the software is just not really well put together for working on that kind of thing. I do have friends that are using it for basic guitar lessons that are having a lot more success, but most of the drummers that I know that are teaching via Zoom end up getting relegated to practice pads or things that are real low volume, or they teach things that have nothing to do with actually playing. Maybe they're doing some reading exercises, or maybe they're doing listening exercises, or maybe they're just sitting and watching the student and dealing with the poor sound quality.
Yeah, I know for me, my summer was slam packed with lessons because the kids didn't have any camps to go to. So, and I didn't have any camps or gigs to go play. So we did lessons all summer via FaceTime primarily because it was the one that was the most consistent. And Zoom I found inconsistent with pausing, stop and starting, same with Skype. But a lot of things have been fine with it. I actually had most of my hour lessons moved to 2 half hours a week, and that helped the students keep moving. So, because normally in an hour lesson, I would play some duets with them. We'd go through some scales, we'd play together more. But since we were basically relegated to what do you work on, how's this going, let's go over it and talk about it. I found that doing 2 half-hour lessons helped the students keep their momentum going throughout the week. And since they didn't have to travel anywhere, 2 half hours was easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found that worked really well. It's still not perfect. I mean, as a horn player, you put your hand in the bell. I have no clue where some of my students' hand positions are at this point. So I'm trying to, and you'll say, well, is your hand nice and open or is the right spot? And they're like, yeah. And knowing from experience with some of those students, you're like, probably not. But so it's definitely not perfect, but I've had quite a few students who have definitely thrived and done a really great job and continue to improve through it.
I find that teaching private lessons online is going as well as it possibly could. Um, I always have my students send me a recording of everything they worked on in lessons the day before their lesson. If I think that there's something I need to demonstrate that I want to make sure they really, really hear it, I'll do a recording and pop it on YouTube and send it back to them. The other thing that's nice is that if my students are playing and like their hand position is atrocious, then I screenshot it and then show them the picture and say, what do you see in your hand? Which is the kind of thing I couldn't get them to do if we were in person, because when you're in person, you're in the middle of playing, even if you're looking at the mirror, there's just a lot of stimulus of you're just looking at a still image. That is a nice bonus. I think the biggest thing about a transition to doing private lessons online is how much more precise and clear you need to be with your verbal instructions in a way that you did not have to be when we were in person. You could just be like, oh yeah, let me show you how this goes. So that has been, I hope it is something that I take away from this moment and become even better of a communicator as a teacher. We were just having a faculty meeting tonight before this, and we were talking about the best and most challenging things about teaching online. And these were some of the things that came up for us.
I can imagine. Okay, well, that's all the questions we had in the chat and in Q&A. Thank you all for answering those.
Yeah, thank you guys. I was just gonna ask a quick question, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but have you been approached to play in a style or genre you previously wouldn't have considered? In a collaboration with someone, or just anything?
Not really. I took some time with several of my videos. I've done some jazz horn etudes that I've always wanted to do. And during a normal gig season, I just didn't have time to sit down and work on that stuff because I'm preparing for the next concert. So I took the time to record some pieces on both historical horns for Mozart duets that I never get to work on, and then also these jazz pieces. Just be like, you know what? I don't have a concert coming up, and so I can spend time playing this. And so that was a lot of fun. Kept me engaged and interested.
Yeah, or something like that you've been wanting to do, and now you have the time. Anybody else?
I haven't been approached by people, but I feel like I've approached people. So I've put like sheet music out online for free and said to people like, please just play it, let's connect. And that has gotten me to connect with other people, but also gotten me other commissions for like trombone etudes and French horn solos and kinds of things I would have never been writing before. So I've been on the receiving end of this or the giving end of this. Whatever. I've been on the other end of how you framed the question, and it's
yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, I know we are past 8 o'clock, and I thank you guys so much for this. I am really surprised at how hopeful really this conversation has been. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Andy.
I was thinking it was going to be doom and gloom for from many of you, but I really do feel a lot of hope that we're looking at new things, we're looking at different technologies, and we're not. You guys don't seem to be intimidated by that stuff, and you're looking for opportunities to expand, and that's exciting for me, and I'm hoping that the people that are tuning in are hopeful and excited as well. So I thank you for sharing that and for generating some hope in these terrible times.
If I could say one more thing,
Sure.
think one of the things about musicians is they're always evaluating, always trying to improve. So they're very natural, lifelong learners. They're never. It's very rare for a musician to just be like, okay, I'm good enough, I'm done.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I think that carries over to so many aspects of their lives in general. And that's obviously possible anywhere, but I find it especially seems to be common among musicians. So it makes them more willing to try and experiment and work to improve in areas that they weren't comfortable in.
Yeah. And plus people are still writing new stuff all the time. So the opportunities are endless.
It's all about improv.
Some are better than others.
Some are much better than others, true. And some of them are learning, like like you said, there are a lot of studio artists, a lot of artists completely that are learning a whole new side of their art because of this technology and because of the way that they need to be able to reach people in ways that they haven't been able to. So I think it's awesome.
Well, I'd certainly like to thank all of our panelists for joining us tonight. This has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. And before we close, I'd like for each of you to tell us what you're working on now and where we can find you. And let's start with Brad.
At the moment, I'm plowing through the school year, trying to prepare to figure out how hybrid learning is going to work next week. And then I'm just practicing away, always trying to come up with some new interesting things to work on, and also just watching to see the audition scene to see what opportunities come up in the next year.
And Brad, where could we find you online if we wanted to follow you?
I guess I should put a link to my YouTube channel on here.
That would be great.
Well, give me just a second.
Sure. And while you're doing that, let's move on to Alice.
I am living in this blue room. I never leave this blue room.
I love the room.
It's an awesome room too. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah, I am just continuing to work at Juilliard. I'm working on a couple commissions. Watch out for a clarinet choir piece for me later this year.
Nice.
And let's see, I'll put my website in the chat and has links to all my social media on it. So alicehjones.com.
Okay, great. Super. Thom, what are you working on?
Well, I'm working on not trying to get confused because I'm trying to do too many things at once right now. But I keep bouncing back between. I've been doing some smooth jazz singles a couple a year with the producer I work with, and then I'm working on 2 new jazz albums. I'm working on one that's a tribute to the CTI years, the Creed Taylor label that was out in that. So I'm doing some remakes of the songs from that there. And then I'm doing more of a straight ahead jazz album at the same time. And then I'm working on a 60s thing of songs that I like from the 60s and doing it with layered guitars and different, just kind of basically doing it myself. But so I've been doing all that and then practicing, trying to get better on the instrument.
Yeah.
It's always amazing how much there is to learn. And, with YouTube, you see all these incredible things people do. And you think, God, is that the only thing they can do? Or can they do everything that good?
Yeah.
So every day I wake up with a different headache of what am I going to work on today too. But, music, I'm glad you said it came out hopeful because I think as musicians, we love music and we're fortunate to do something we love. And, it's hard to be anything but hopeful, even when it's really bad. And, we always, I think the spirit in us with music, you find a way to kind of get through things like this and find new ways to do things. So it's great, and I think a lot of people are putting a lot of music out now because they're at home and doing things. And I know a couple of the genres I work in, the jazz and the smooth jazz thing, the radio people are getting inundated with records because everybody's home and everybody's able to record somehow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more recorded music getting out there in some of these areas.
Yeah.
So, so those are the things I'm working on. So hopefully there'll be a new single. There'll be a couple releases this year soon.
And can we find that on your website?
Yeah, it's thomrotella.com. I'm kind of technologically
That's
limited.
okay.
I don't know.
I already put it in
Oh,
the
you did.
chat
Thank
for you.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You could see I had a hard time even getting on this call. So,
Darnice will take care of you, I'm telling you.
okay, thank you for this. It's been wonderful.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Thank you so much. And Brian, I know you're still working on the tour, and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, about 85% of my live work right now is centered primarily around the Elton Live tour. The rest of it's just local things, you know, supper club gigs and things like that. But so if you go to eltonlive.com, you can check all that stuff out, see what the tour dates are. We just opened brianstevens.com back up today with a brand new site, so you can find out most everything you'd want to know. Secret Cove Studios is where I spend most of the time during the week, secretcovestudios.com. And so, you know, between working in the studio, playing the live gigs, that handles pretty much all of that stuff. And then when I decide not to sleep, I've got this other little side company called Session Ace, where we make all kinds of different products for musicians, including very affordable, extremely high quality in-ear monitors. And you can find that at sessionace.com.
Okay, great.
Was that Session Ace, ACE?
ACE, correct.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, it's been a real pleasure to get all of you together, and some of you, Brad, I saw this morning, and some of you, like Brian, I probably haven't seen in at least 30 years. Alice, it's been at least 20 years. Thom, it's been a couple of years. I can't tell you what a delight it is to have you guys as guests and talk about the things that we've been talking about for the past hour. Thank you again, and we wish you the best in your musical career and every other parts of your lives. Thank you. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight.
Pleasure to join you all.
Thank you. Nice meeting everybody.
It's been awesome.
And for everybody that's viewing tonight, thank you for joining us. And if you like this program and you'd like for us to do some other things like this, feel free to drop me a line. My email again is awolverton@aacpl.net. Everybody take care, be safe, and support music in your communities, wherever they are. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks again.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take care. Panelists, stay in touch. Love to hear from you.
Thanks, Mr. Wolverton.
Thank you, Alice, so much. Great to
Thanks,
see you.
Bernice. It was
Thanks
awesome.
meeting you, Alice. Yeah.
Dynamic duo. I love it.
Take care. Good night. Oh, wow. Well, what do you think?
I think that was great.
Yeah, it was fun. I think
I
it's a
lost
good
track.
group.
I lost count. I was keeping track and people kept popping in and I was like, oh, okay, but
I saw 36 was the highest number I saw.
that's
but
what I saw too.
is that what
yeah.
you saw? 36? Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. That's still
Yeah,
not
that
bad. I
works
mean,
for me.
I was hoping to have a
Yeah.
lot more, but yeah, I think it was good. I hope the audience enjoyed it. It really
I think they
was.
did. I mean, that's a good response.
It really was a lot more hopeful than I
Yes,
thought it was going to be. You know.
Yeah, me too. But I kind of expected it to be a lot of struggling to deal with the new formats and the new types of things that way. But they sound like it was one. I think it's a good time to have this program. If you had the program, 6 months ago or earlier in the pandemic, it might have been less hopeful.
And I struggled with that because like a couple of weeks ago, I thought, it looks like we're coming out of this thing. Maybe this won't even be relevant by the time we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. If we'd have done this like 6 months ago, it would have been a lot less hopeful.
Yeah.
People, like you said, people are frustrated with the technology.
But they've also learned more in that time too, right? So it's been a year. If your last live performance was a year ago today, then you probably learned how to do this in that amount of time. And if you haven't, then you have pretty much decided either you're going to sit it out or or you'll just play, in front of your house.
Right.
Yeah. So
which is fine. I mean, if I mean, that's a wonderful thing, you know.
it is. It is.
We talk all the time about, or Cindy and I talk about this sometimes, about, you know, at one time there was nothing else to do, you know.
Right.
200 years ago, you didn't have TV or internet or movies or
Right.
anything. More people played instruments.
They did.
Maybe they weren't great at it, but they played instruments for each other.
And that's how they entertain themselves, and that's how they did. Yeah. So, you know, it was one of those things. Now that there's so many things to get involved, which is why I was hoping maybe we talk a little bit more about how they felt about music and audiences,
Mhm.
you know, bringing audiences in, because we talked a lot about, you know, young people getting involved in music, but if, you know, the audience is aging out,
Yeah.
how are you bringing new people in?
Yeah, I had some of that down, and time was just getting away, and
Yeah.
you know, we could have gone.
We could have got another hour
We
easily.
could easily
Yeah.
easily got another hour, but I think everybody was represented really well. Everybody had good opportunities to speak, and
Yeah.
they seem to be enjoying it. So
I think
I'm
so.
enjoying it. Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, Andy. It's